Hello children, welcome back to e-learning classes of P.N.AMERSEY High School. Hope you all are safe. So children, let's continue our chapter number 3, The Shellfish Giant. Saw a most beautiful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. In every tree that he could see there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently above the children's heads. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all round it, crying bitterly. The poor tree was still covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. "Climb up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could, but the boy was too tiny. The giant's heart melted as he looked out. "How selfish I have been," he said. "Now I know why the spring would not come here. I'll put that poor little boy on the top of the tree, and then I'll knock down the wall, and my garden shall be the children's playground forever and ever." He was really very sorry for what he had done. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly and went out into the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they ran away, and the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he did not see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his hands and put him into the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossoms, and the birds came and sang on it. And the little boy stretched out his two arms and flung them around the giant's neck and kissed him. And the other children, when they saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running back, and with them came the spring. "It is your garden now, little children," said the giant, and he took the great axe and knocked down the wall. And when the people were going to the market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. "But where is your little companion?" he said. "The boy I put into the tree." The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. "We don't know," answered the children. "He has gone away. You must tell him to be sure to come tomorrow," said the shellfish giant. The children said that they did not know where he lived and had never seen him before, and the giant felt very sad. Every afternoon, when school was over, the children came and played with the giant, but the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his little friend and often spoke of him. "Oh, I would like to see him," he used to say. Years went by, and the giant grew very old and feeble. He could not play about any more, so he sat in a huge armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. "I have many beautiful flowers," he said, "but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all." One winter morning he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep, and that the flowers were resting. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked.
It certainly was a marvelous sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. Its branches were golden and silver fruit hung down from them. Underneath it stood the little boy he had loved. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy, and out into the garden. He hastened across the grass and came near to the child, and when he came quite close, his face grew red with anger, and he said, "Who hath dared you wound thee?" On the palms of the child's hands were the prints of two nails, and the prints of two nails were on the little feet. "Who had dared to wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me that I may take my big sword and slay him." "Nay," answered the child, "but these are the wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant. And a strange awe fell on him, and he kneeled before the little child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." And when the children ran in that afternoon, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. Children, this story was written by Oscar Wilde.
So, children, in this story, you all saw that the giant was very selfish and he did not like that children come in his garden and play. So, he built a high, huge wall that children should not enter the garden. Put the notice at the wall that trespasser would be prosecuted, means those who will enter this garden, they will be punished. After that, children did not enter his garden, but in his garden there was always winter. No birds were singing, no trees blossoms, and everywhere there was snow and frost because there were no children in the garden. But after a few days, children made a small hole in the wall and entered his garden. So, as children entered, the birds started singing and the trees blossomed. There were flowers and birds and children everywhere in every tree. At one corner of the garden there was still winter because there was a little boy who could not climb the tree. So this giant saw this scene and he helped the boy to sit on the tree. Now this giant was no longer bad, but now he used to play with children and was very happy. Children were very happy in this garden. He was fond of that little boy, but the little boy never came to the garden again. He waited and waited long period for that boy. At last he asked other children why that boy is not coming, but nobody knew about that boy. Once he saw that little boy in the garden standing under the tree with white flowers. He asked the boy where he was and why he did not came so long in the garden. The boy replied that now this giant will also go along with him in the garden where the garden is in the paradise. Giant happily kneeled down in front of the boy and was dead. Next day when children came to play in the garden, they saw that giant was lying under the tree with white flowers everywhere on his body. This was the end of the story, The Selfish Giant. So, children, try to find out the answers of the comprehension 1 and 2 and the exercise. Try your own. I am not sending the PDF of supplementary reader. So, children, thank you and have a nice day.